and within a few weeks, everything collapsed. This $10 banknote I'm holding right now almost destroyed the United States while it was still an infant nation. In this video, you'll see how the ambition of a single man nearly pushed an entire country to the edge of bankruptcy overnight, how people stormed prisons trying to recover their money, and how the streets of New York turned into a battlefield. If this great disaster of 1792 had never happened, there would be no Wall Street today and no dollar in your pocket. Prepare yourself for one of the largest, most hidden and dirtiest operations in American history. Now, let's rewind. 8:10 a.m. Wall Street. But this is not the Wall Street you know. There's no building yet. No screens. No organised system. Just people and expectations. Gathering under a Buttonwood tree. The system that today processes billions of dollars back then existed in the shadow of a tree. Paper in their hands, debt certificates, bonds. Someone shouts, 6% federal bonds, 95. Another says, 97. Someone else offers an even higher price. The crowd grows. Everyone's eyes carry the same emotion. Something is slipping away, and nobody wants to be left behind. But prices rise. Nobody fully understands why they're rising. But everyone feels the same thing. Money is being made. And this is exactly how many financial bubbles in history begin. Nobody fully understands the system, but everyone sees the rise, and a rising price gives most people confidence, even though it should do the exact opposite, because sometimes the most dangerous moment isn't the collapse. It's when everything appears to be going perfectly, and there's something here that seems small. But a few weeks later, it will lock the entire system. People see the price, but they don't see the mechanism behind the price. And most of the time a system accumulates stress in the invisible parts, not in the visible ones, just like today. People see green candles on screens, rising stocks, crypto rallies, newly rich investors, but they don't see the fragility behind the system, because fragility is invisible at first, until it becomes too large to stay invisible. Now let's understand the system. America is a new country, fresh out of the War of Independence, buried in debt, fragmented, trust problems everywhere. The economy hasn't stabilised yet. Even the tax system is still forming. The country has no unified financial identity, and that's a major problem, because the thing investors hate most is uncertainty. At the time, different states carried separate debts. Some wanted to repay them, some didn't, some simply couldn't. And this created one thing, an unstable financial environment. And in such an environment, people don't invest. Money stops moving, the system cannot grow, people hold cash, they avoid risk, the economy slows down, and this is where governments confront a critical truth. Economies don't grow only through production, they grow through trust. A farmer can grow wheat, a merchant can transport goods, a harbour can fill with ships, but if people don't trust tomorrow, money stops circulating through the system, and when money stops moving, the economy suffocates. America in 1792 stood exactly at this point. It had potential, but the shared belief necessary to support the system had not yet formed. And at this exact moment, another figure enters the stage, Alexander Hamilton. Hamilton was not an ordinary man. Born in the Caribbean, he had seen poverty, he had seen war, and he had studied Europe's financial systems. Today, many people only know him as a founding father, but Hamilton was actually something else, the financial architect of America. He understood one thing: if America wanted to become a powerful nation, it first needed a powerful credit system. Because strong states do not survive on armies alone, they survive on their ability to borrow. That may sound strange, but it's one of the foundational truths of the modern world. A state that can borrow is powerful. A state nobody wants to lend money to is fragile. Hamilton's report, January 1790. In his Report on Public Credit presented to Congress, Hamilton wrote, "A national debt, if properly managed, will be to us a national blessing and a unifying force. The honour of a government is measured by its willingness to stand behind every promise it makes." Hamilton's plan was radical, but also necessary, to gather all debts under one system, to federalise them, and to make those debts valuable. What does that mean? A debt certificate is no longer just debt. It becomes an investment, an opportunity, an asset. And this idea completely changes human psychology. Because for the first time, people begin to think, I can make money from government debt. That sounds normal today, but at the time, it was revolutionary. Because previously, many war bonds held by ordinary people were considered nearly worthless. Some had sold them far below their real value. Soldiers leaving the war, desperate for cash, had handed those certificates over to merchants, and suddenly those papers begin to rise in value, creating a massive transfer of wealth. Some people become incredibly rich, and when others see this, the same question appears: why shouldn't I profit too? Financial manias usually begin at exactly this point. People stop focusing on production and start focusing on how much others are making. The psychology is still the same today. Your neighbor makes money from crypto. A friend earns huge returns from stocks. Someone on social media shows $1 million portfolio. And your brain begins asking, am I too late? This is the true fuel of financial bubbles, FOMO, fear of missing out. In 1792, there was no term for it, but the emotion itself was exactly the same. And this is where something new is born, the financial market. But this market is not perfect. In fact, it's extremely primitive. No rules, no oversight, no transparency, no restrictions on insider information, weak liquidity systems, no mechanisms to stop the market. And in this environment, the fastest growing thing becomes risk. Because people begin pushing the limits of the system. And throughout history, financial systems usually grow in the same sequence. First opportunity appears, then money flows in, then greed expands, then leverage arrives, and after that, the collapse begins. Now a second name enters the stage, William Duer. Duer is different. Not just an investor, he's someone from inside the system, connected to the treasury, tied to political circles, and most importantly, he sees the weaknesses in the system, and he asks one question: how far can I push this system? The answer: much further than expected. At first glance, Duer's plan looks simple, but its impact is enormous. Buy up bonds, reduce supply, push prices higher. But there's one critical detail here. He isn't doing it with his own money. He's doing it with debt, heavy debt, aggressive debt, uncontrolled debt. He borrows from one person, buys bonds, uses those bonds as collateral, borrows again, then buys more. It becomes a cycle, and as the cycle grows, the system appears stronger. But at this exact moment, the system is actually beginning to break. Because leveraged systems look powerful from the outside, but internally they depend on one thing: cash flow. And the moment cash flow stops, everything reverses. The primitive versions of structures we now see in hedge funds are actually forming here. Small capital, massive positions, high risk, high expectations, and prices assumed to rise forever. Now let's look at the numbers. Bonds are trading around 75%. Duer and similar investors buy aggressively. Prices rise to 85%. More buying follows. Prices hit 95%, and then 100%, meaning roughly a 25% increase in a short period. People see this and think, the system works, but what they're actually seeing isn't the system. It's the effect of leverage. The important thing is this: how was this rise financed? Through debt. For example, you open a $10,000 position with only $2,000 in capital. A 25% increase creates $2,500 in profit. That's a 125% return. And at this point, the human mind begins to change. Because fast profits distort risk perception. People stop thinking carefully. They assume the gains will continue. And this is the most dangerous moment. Hamilton's warning letter to Duer, December 1791. Alexander Hamilton sends a private letter to his close friend William Duer. Allow me to offer you a friendly warning. The fire of speculation is falling too heavily upon you and upon this young country. Artificial rises in price always end in painful collapse. Protect yourself from this fire, or it will burn everything. Because when a system begins producing easy money, risk becomes invisible. Everyone starts doing the same thing. Borrow money, buy bonds, wait for prices to rise, borrow again. The system accelerates. More people enter, more money flows in. And as prices rise, people interpret it as confirmation. Because the human brain often interprets rising prices as proof of correctness. But in markets, Rising prices can sometimes mean nothing more than rising risk. And there is an invisible limit: cash, liquidity, real money. And that limit always arrives silently. Nobody notices the approaching fracture at first, because collapses rarely begin dramatically. They begin looking rational. One investor borrows just a little more. One bank gives just a little more credit. One broker accepts just a little more risk. And everyone thinks everything is under control. But in financial systems, that is often the most dangerous sentence of all, because right before systems collapse, they usually appear stable to most people. The same thing happened in 1792. People were getting rich. Stories of wealth spread through New York. Some people made the biggest profits of their lives within just months. In coffee houses, everyone talked about the same thing: bonds, prices, new opportunities, more upside. And this atmosphere is highly contagious, because people are influenced not only by prices, but by each other. At the center of financial panics and bubbles lies social psychology. A person alone may hesitate to take risk, but if everyone is taking risk begins to feel normal. This is why people living inside a bubble usually cannot see the bubble itself, because everyone around them is doing the same thing, and normalized madness no longer appears insane. March 1792. Debts are called in, and the first crack appears: Duer cannot pay. By itself, this is not yet a collapse, but the system learns about it. And then the most important thing happens. Trust breaks. Trust is not a number, not a chart, not a line on a balance sheet, but it is the foundation of the system. And once trust breaks, no number can save the system. Because most financial systems actually operate on expectation. People assume payments will arrive tomorrow. Banks assume loans will be repaid. Investors assume there will always be buyers in the market. But the moment those assumptions fail, everyone runs for the exit at once, and this is where panic is born. Now the dominoes begin. One investor panics, he sells, someone else sees it, they sell too, then another, then everyone. Prices begin to fall. But here is the critical point. This is not merely a price decline. This is a liquidity crisis. People want to sell, but there are no buyers. At this point, asset values become theoretical. They exist on paper, but not in reality. And this is the freezing of the system. Even today, most major crises operate the same way. This is exactly what happened in the mortgage market in 2008. Banks held enormous assets on paper, but nobody knew their true value. Nobody wanted to buy them, and the system froze. What happened in 1792 was the primitive version of the same phenomenon. Suddenly everyone wanted cash. Because during crises, people realize one thing: profit is theoretical. Cash is real. Duer begins collapsing. Creditors arrive at his door. Payments are demanded. Rumors spread through the market. And rumors are extremely powerful in financial systems, because people fill information gaps with fear. One person says, Duer may be bankrupt. Another exaggerates it. Then someone else asks, if Duer collapses, who else is exposed? And this is where chain reaction fear begins. Because financial systems operate through connections. One institution's problem becomes another institution's problem. One investor's collapse becomes someone else's liquidity crisis. And for the first time, people begin seeing how interconnected the system truly is. And here lies one of modern finance's greatest paradoxes. Connection strengthens the system, but it also makes it fragile. Because every connection creates contagion risk. People in 1792 were experiencing this in real time. And as the panic grew, the atmosphere in New York streets began changing. The crowd that had recently been euphoric now fell silent. People became afraid to ask for prices, because sometimes the answer was worse. Some investors lost fortunes within days. Some could not pay their debts. Some fled. Some went bankrupt. And in that era, bankruptcy was not merely financial. It was social destruction, loss of reputation, collapse of identity. Because financial systems do not only manage money, they also manage human psychology. A person may feel like a genius during the rise, but when the collapse begins, that same person can feel completely helpless. And this is the darkest side of financial panics. They do not only destroy wealth, they destroy identities. Duer's prison letter, March the 23rd, 1792. William Duer writes the following from his debtor's prison cell to Alexander Hamilton. Alexander, there are hundreds of people outside my door who want to tear me apart. If the Treasury does not intervene, it will not only be me who dies, your grand American vision will also perish in the dust of this prison. Do not save me. Save the system you created. Now Alexander Hamilton enters the stage once again, and Hamilton is facing a mathematical reality. If he does nothing, the system collapses. If he intervenes, the system may survive. And Hamilton realizes something critical. This is no longer just the problem of a few investors. This is a system problem, and if the system collapses, America's financial credibility may disappear. This is crucial, because for a newly established nation, loss of trust can be fatal. Foreign investors may withdraw, the credit system may unravel, the economy may stop. This is why Hamilton intervenes. He begins purchasing bonds from the market, approximately $100,000 worth. Today that may seem small, but the effect was enormous. Because what changes here is not merely the price, but expectation itself. Hamilton sends a message to the market. The system is not completely alone, and sometimes, during crises, that is the most important thing of all, because panic is not mathematical, it is psychological. If people believe the system is going to collapse entirely, the collapse accelerates. But if people believe there is support behind the system, panic can slow down. Jefferson's harsh reaction, April 1792. When Thomas Jefferson learns about Hamilton's intervention in the market, he is horrified. In a letter to James Madison, he writes, "I believe banking institutions are more dangerous than standing armies. Hamilton has used public money to rescue a group of gamblers, placing the freedom of future generations at risk. One morning, our children may wake up homeless in the very land their fathers fought to conquer." Hamilton's move did exactly what it was intended to do. It slowed the panic. Prices began stabilizing. Liquidity slowly returned. The system continued functioning. But something had changed forever. A silent rule had been written. If you take enormous risks, you may not be completely abandoned. And this idea entered the DNA of the financial system. Today we call it by different names. Too big to fail, central bank intervention, liquidity support, bailouts. But one of its roots begins here, in 1792, and this matters enormously. Because one of the greatest debates in modern finance is exactly this. Should the system be saved, or should those who take the risks bear the consequences themselves? Because intervention may save the system in the short term, but in the long term, it can create another problem, moral hazard. Meaning people begin thinking, maybe if I fall, I won't completely collapse. And that belief encourages even greater risk-taking in the future. Financial systems sometimes become increasingly fragile for this exact reason, because every rescue can expand future risk appetite. Now step back for a moment. What happened in 1792 was not just a crisis. It was a model. Borrow money, push prices higher, make everyone believe they are getting rich, and then trust breaks. And this model never truly changes over time. It only grows larger. 1, 2000, 2008, 2020. Different instruments, different technologies, different screens, but the same human psychology. Because market technology changes, human nature changes much more slowly. And never forget this. In 1792, people did not lose their money overnight. First, they lost their trust. And once trust disappeared, money was only the consequence. And perhaps the most dangerous part is this. At the time, nobody realized they were inside a crisis. Because collapses do not arrive screaming. They begin silently. They appear rational. For a while, everything even feels normal, until the system stops functioning. Today the system is larger, faster, more complex. There are algorithms, artificial intelligence, trillion-dollar funds. But the foundation has not changed. Everything still runs on trust. Banks require trust. Governments require trust. Currencies require trust. And once trust breaks, everything ends the same way. Because the true engine of financial systems is not money. It is belief. The belief that tomorrow will remain as stable as today. And history's greatest crises usually begin with the same question. What if the system is not as strong as we think it is? In 1792, people felt that fear for the first time, and perhaps the most unsettling part is this. We may still be living inside the same cycle today. Because although the modern system appears more sophisticated, the underlying structure is still similar. Debt expands, leverage expands, risk spreads, and people assume the system will continue working forever, just as they did in 1792. But history shows us one thing. No financial system can survive forever on unlimited trust. Eventually it collides with reality, and that is where crises are born. This channel exists to examine those moments of fracture, the hidden side of systems, human psychology, the relationship between money and power, and the fragilities most people never notice. If you find this perspective valuable, subscribe and like the video. Because in the next analysis, you'll see how the system began taking even larger risks and why most people failed to notice it. And then you'll understand this. This is not an exception. This is a cycle.